This is the tundra of Alaska, a large area of land in the northwestern part of North America. Most people know that Alaska is a state of the United States of America, but the history of the state lied in the hands of the Russians. Given everything we know about Alaska and the wealth of resources that this area of land has, it's hard to understand why Russia would ever want to sell it. And today we're going to unpack arguably one of the worst trade deals in history. Let's discuss. Hello! Welcome to Brain Spill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and Russia is big. Very big. So big, in fact, that Russia is approximately 17,098,246 square kilometres and encompasses 1/8 of the Earth's inhabitable landmass. Jeez, thanks Wikipedia. You'd think that this country, based on the European and Asian continents, would have more than enough land to know what to do with. And, well, you'd be largely correct, but recent events say otherwise. And for the longest time, Alaska used to be part of Russia. Yes, Russia, a long time ago, had expanded their trade ventures and settlements on the Pacific coast of North America. In 1725, Russian Tsar Peter the Great sent his men to explore the Alaskan coast, mainly due to the fact that Russia had a keen interest in this region, which was rich in natural resources and not a lot of inhabitants present. This was pretty much ripe for the taking. Russian sovereignty was declared over the area in 1821, formally bringing this within the borders of Russia. Whilst many ventures were set up at the time in order to get these resources, there weren't actually many people living there, with a handful of people living there year round. It was quite the desolate place. This would be the start of Russia's occupation in Alaska, but shortly after this, the United States of America would slowly but surely start expanding to the west, getting closer and closer to the Pacific coast. Soon they would come into contact with the Russians and compete over trade and whatnot. This was likely a thorn in the side of their expansion when it came to heading to the west, but if you're not there first, then you have to get other ways to get around the competition. Vast empires spanned the globe during these times, including Russia, but with the defeat in the Crimean War, Russia's interest in the area would diminish over time, particularly due to the fact that the region would become much less desirable to defend from other powers. I'm talking the Brits here, with those cheeky fuckers that are getting real close, occupying what is now Canada. So, from the Russian perspective, the preferable option here would be to sell their land, and by doing that, they could hand it to a power rather than having another power come and seize it from them. The natural buyer of such a land was the newly independent United States of America. Anything to keep it out of the hand of those pesky Brits. By selling this to the US, this might be a great way to offset the plans that the British had for the region. Secretary of State William Seward entered into negotiations with the Russian minister for the purchase of Alaska. This was all going swimmingly until a little thing happened called the American Civil War. Yes, the American Civil War, something pretty big that was happening in the country at the time. So any idea of purchasing a large, barren, icy wasteland was probably not very high on their agenda at that time. So plans to purchase Alaska were put on ice, no pun intended. However, after that minor scuffle was settled, and when the Civil War came to an end, Secretary of State William Seward quickly took up a renewed Russian offer and on the 30th of March 1867 agreed to the proposal from the Russian minister in Washington to purchase Alaska for $7.2 million, now commonly referred to as the Alaska Purchase. The Senate approved the treaty of the purchase on the 9th of April, with President Andrew Johnson signing the treaty on the 28th of May that year, to which Alaska was formally transferred to the United States on the 18th of October 1867. Wow, that was an incredibly quick turnaround. Basically, they just settle the Civil War and say, you know what, just to treat ourselves, let's buy a massive piece of land up north. Because why the hell not? $7.2 million is worth about $140 million in the year 2021, just to give you an idea and perspective of what the price of this was when they sold it to the US. Some would call that a steal, not gonna lie. And yes, this is something that people commonly ask because for such a large piece of land in which we know how resourceful it is, it just seems so odd that they would sell it for so cheap, pennies on the dollar. So why was that the case? The area was never originally called Alaska, but the region gained its name after the purchase, in which the Americans gave it its name after the Inuit word for Great Land. The original purpose of the purchase, according to the US Secretary of State, was that Alaska was a doorstep to the Asian continent, an important trading route and a key landing point for a trading gateway. However, after the purchase for about 3 decades, mind you, the US kinda didn't really do anything with Alaska. I mean, who could have blamed them on this big icy cold rock in the middle of nowhere? At the time, the biggest thing in the area was the seal trade. However, many years later, with the wealth of resources that would soon be discovered in Alaska, this basement deal would be referred to as, well, as steel. Yes, a major gold deposit was discovered in the area in 1896, to which Alaska became a prime location for the gold rush at the time. The strategic importance of Alaska was finally recognised, which was impounded in the next century during the Second World War, which was then formalised into an actual US state on the 3rd of January 1959, to which this really brought Alaska into the sphere of influence of the United States of America, a true state of the Union. And yes, this is a place with natural resources which, over time and the price of those resources, would completely outweigh the purchase price of Alaska, making this, like we said, the deal of the century. So yeah, that's kinda how this played out. And yes, it's easy to look back in hindsight and question why on earth they decided to sell, but there we are. It's happened. So, if you were Russia and you held on a little bit longer, you just may have never known. If you guys liked the video, here's another one just like it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.